conversation with Kendra and with any questions we may have from the audience. So with that, let me turn it over to Kendra.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Okay, let me get my slides going. Let's see. And let's see. All right, are you seeing my presentation?
I can see it, Kendra.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Sharon, Rich, and Arcadia for this opportunity today to present about patient registries and why they're important, and Catherine for joining me in this conversation. So for my first slide, I borrowed this from CPATH and NORD because I thought it was just a great visual about how patient registries are truly the key to understanding a rare disease like ADTKD, and that every single person that's part of the registry is valuable. Their data is invaluable to us. It builds our knowledge of how ADTKD progresses, how prevalent it is, and then, we're learning what we can measure for a future trial to show that the drug is working. And so when we're talking about the ADTKD registry, what we're talking about is the Wake Forest ADTKD registry. And how you join this is by enrolling in our research study. And this research study and registry started in 2002 when Dr. Blyer and his team identified UMOD as one of the genes that cause ADTKD. And so when you enroll in this study, the data that you give us is, or that you offer to us and share with us, is the registry itself. So, if you're not part of our study already, you would contact us and our coordinators will work with you about where you are with your IKD journey, if you need genetic testing, and then also how to gather that information and share information with us. If you've already joined our study at Wake Forest, then you're in the ADTKD registry. And if you have questions about that, or again, if you're not enrolled already, please contact us and we'd love to talk to you about this. Okay, let's see, where are we at? Okay. One thing I wanted to touch on is, we realize that when you enroll with our study and are part of our registry, that you're sharing really sensitive information with us. And one of our highest priorities is to make sure that data that you share with us and you're trusting us with is secure and safe. And so all of your data remains confidential, and your data is maintained and secured on HIPAA compliant in a HIPAA compliant manner. None of your labs or genetic testing are entered into your medical record or connected to your medical record in any way. And we cannot give information to anybody about you or your results. And likewise, we don't give information to any insurance companies either. Any data that we do share with companies like Catherine's or teams like Anna Greca's or Stan Kamak's team is all anonymous. And so this means the data that's shared cannot be traced back to you. So there's not even dates associated with when a creatinine was measured. And when we do share this information, we go through an approval process with our institution. We talk to our ethics board and our contracts team about the data that we would like to share, how it's going to be used by the other group, and once we share that information, how they're going to store it. Because once we share it, we want to make sure that your data is safe there too. Because again, like we know, it's a relationship of how, you're trusting us with this information to use it appropriately, and we want to make sure that, we keep that safe. So our study itself, when you enroll into it, it's called the Characterization of Individuals with Inherited Kidney Disease. And it's designed this way to be able to enroll people at any stage of their journey to be able to find answers. And so the first aim is to identify cause of inherited kidney disease in families. And when we're talking about ADTKD today, mostly with individuals who have UMOD or MUC1 mutations, we do have patients that and their families that enroll with us that don't have UMOD or MUC1 mutations, but we still want to be able to give them answers. And like Dr. Zhivna presented yesterday, there's other ways that we work to be able to provide that. So if there's a negative testing result, we don't just stop there and say, well, you don't have UMOD or MUC1, it just ends. We keep working to find those answers. Okay, so then aims 2 and 3 of our study are really where we start building our registry with collecting clinical and genetic data so that we can better understand and describe the disease, and also collect samples like urine and blood samples for to create our biobank for future clinical trial preparedness. So our registry in 2015, I moved it from a very large Excel sheet to REDCap, which is a platform designed for clinical trials developed by Vanderbilt University, and it's a HIPAA compliant secured system. So each participant has a registry record, and this contains like all of your clinical data. It contains your genetic testing data, as well as every single sample that you've sent to us and where we've sent it and what we've done with it. And all that data is collected into our registry. And again, we work with our regulatory agencies within our institution to make sure we're meeting all of our policies and, everything for governing human research. And then when we're sharing this with collaborators and companies like Atlas, um, and Catherine will talk about that very soon. We want to make sure that we're doing this because that's how we learn more about the disease, is we're collecting this information and we use it, but we also want to share this so that we can expand our knowledge about ADTKD. A lot of you are already in our study, and I just wanted to show you that over time we have collected and processed in our little group over 7,300 samples over the last 30 years. And this is thanks to our participants and our collaborators. Our Wake Forest studies, our samples are processed for genetic testing and our biobank. We've also had other studies like a vitamin D study and the urine study with Catherine's company, and also our most recently, the Optimum study with CPATH that's funded by the FDA that Aliza was talking about. But another set that we do is we also coordinate MUC1 testing with the Broad Clinical Lab. And in this, we're accepting and processing DNA samples for collaborators so that they're able to access MUC1 testing for their patients. So these are samples that are coming into us, but these patients are not enrolled into our study. So it's kind of like a separate cohort that we call the collaborator cohort. And so when we look at our total registry of ADTKD patients, for our consented Wake Forest group, we have 1,243 people who've been genotyped and shared data with us that have ADTKD. And in our collaborator cohort, we have 916 individuals, which is over 2,100 people that we know worldwide that have ADTKD. And if you look at our graphs below of individuals and families we're identifying year by year for UMOD and MUC1, it's continually growing. We haven't stopped finding people. So we know these families are out there. And this is why we have this huge shared goal with RKDF and other groups. We want to continue identifying and finding these families and spreading our outreach to find this and keep increasing our numbers, right? And also, a really great milestone, I started in 2012 when MUC1 was first identified. And in 12 years later, 13 years later in 2025, we hit a milestone of 1,000 individuals who have been identified with ADTKD MUC1. And so that's been really great. And of course, we want to keep, increasing those numbers. And then I just wanted to take a moment to talk about our other ADTKD teams that we collaborate with. I tried to list as many as I could here. It's not everybody, but we have groups that we work with who have their own cohorts for their country, or they're a team that's developing these amazing cell and animal models looking at ADTKD, and also groups that are looking at biomarkers that we can use for clinical trial. And so, collectively, we have over 2,000 patients. We have these great groups and all these decades worth of data that have led to over 150 publications about ADTKD. And every group and every day we're working on these, and these publications lead us to closer to this cure. And I just also want to highlight that this wouldn't be possible without our patient registry. Our patient registry allows us to correlate what's found in an animal and what's found in a cell model with what we're seeing in patients and how we can translate this into a clinical trial. And so going towards clinical trials, Eliza in their session before us did a really great job at this. But I just wanted to highlight that with clinical trial preparedness, that a natural history study is necessary. And this is something that's running parallel to research teams like Dr. Greca's that are finding these exciting therapies. And the natural history study is going to use the patient registry data to answer these questions that I've listed here about progression and prevalence, and most importantly, how many people would be available for a clinical trial. And what we're doing with our natural history studies is we have, so CPATH was awarded this great study with the FDA for ADTKD, and we're working with them, and we're really excited about this opportunity. And so we've worked with CPATH to develop IRB protocols, data sharing agreements, and plans about how to utilize the registry that we already have for these natural history studies that are going to be used for future FDA applications. And so our part of this study with CPATH and FDA is what we call the optimum study, and it's 3 parts. The first part's a really big part, which is our patient registry that many of you are in. So you're part of this fundamental, amazing, study that we're doing with, CPATH is going to be modeling this data to do these natural history studies. And so we've already shared anonymous data with 1,200 people to begin modeling. It's included over 10,000 serum creatinine measurements, as well as other factors that, we've shared. And then there's also a perspective side to this. So that means that individuals are in a study right now and collecting data every 3 months. And so that we can model that, see how that applies to what we found in the retrospective group, but it's also preparing us for the future, right? So that we kind of are already starting to get prepared of what would a trial look like in the, and how can we organize this and our data and things like that on kind of administrative things on our side, right? And then another part is the elastography study, which is a new study to see if measuring fibrosis of the kidney through ultrasound could be used as a factor for progression or within a trial. So it's really exciting. Hopefully I hope next year we'll to share more information about what we've learned with the Optimum trial next year. And for this, you have to travel to Wake Forest and Winston-Salem and for the procedure and meet our team and meet Dr. Blyer, and it's really great. We've had 46 people already and their spouse and about 7 spouses, and it's just really great. So again, why I should join the registry. Again, going back to that idea of the key, joining the registry helps us to unlock this idea, this ADTKD to find a cure, and you'll also be part of these natural history studies that are needed to take us to a clinical trial and take, us to the next level to find a cure. And again, I just want to say, and I can't stress this enough, and I speak for our team here at Wake Forest, that many of you are already part of our study and our registry, and we thank you for your participation and your willingness to share your information with us, provide samples, and have us use your data for these natural history studies. And we wouldn't be where we are today without all of these patients willing to work with us. And also we have all these other things that come along with it. So if you have any questions, please ask us. We'd love to talk to you about it. And then this is our team, Dr. Blyer, myself, Abby and Lauren have been with us for about 10 years. They're our family coordinators. Shariana and Stephanie have been hired for our Optimum study, and they're really great as well. And then Antonio, he's our laboratory coordinator. So he processes our samples and makes sure they get to all the places they need to go and they get all the testing they need and that you get your results back. So that's where I tried to speed through all of that because I know we're kind of behind on time. So I'm going to stop sharing right now, if that's okay.
Thank you, Kendra. Kendra, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Sorry, one second. So, Kendra and I have been working together for, I think, close to a decade.
Yeah.
And I was actually on the research side of things and now have jumped over to the company side of things, which has been really special and unique to connect even deeper to the patient population. And I wanted to share how the registry in action is helping to move towards a treatment. And I think Kendra had mentioned this early in the presentation regarding the urine collection study, which I'll talk about quickly, and then maybe we can get into some of the Q&A because I'm sure there's probably a lot of questions about how the registry helps inform research, biomarker development, understanding disease progression, but as well as helping us advance to a clinical trial. Um, so one of the things that we had done in 2022 and into 2023 is we did a non-interventional urine study. What that means is that we didn't administer any drug, we just collected urine. And this was really sort of a proof of concept in terms of not only how we can recruit in this rare disease population, but also um, that we can actually, what we would be collecting for is helping to understand the disease progression and how biomarkers or how we can understand how the treatment is working once we get there. So again, we were able to recruit 26 patients, and maybe some of you are on this call today, so thank you so much for participating in that. We did that in 3 months, which is just tremendous. Um, the registry data, as I had mentioned, helps us to understand the disease progression and also how to measure if a treatment is working. And so this in in future treatments, again, we'll be able to see how urine or other biomarkers might be able to detect whatever drug that we administer, how effective it is. And I just wanted to say thank you because all of you who are out participating, the patients that are on this call, help us move closer to treatment. And I'll go to the next slide. Again, this is sort of just at a high level, patients in registry, moving towards those research studies. So as Kendra was mentioning, all the studies that they're doing as part of their registry, as well as what we're doing from the company lens of these non-interventional, no drug being administered trials, and then moving to help inform smarter trial design. I think Eliza Thompson and the team had highlighted that earlier. And then obviously developing treatment. So all of you are helping to power this path forward to develop a treatment. Um, that's all I have today. Again, I don't want to add too much, but I know that there's probably some burning questions about when a clinical trial is happening. And again, I think Kendra did a really good job at articulating why it's impactful to join this registry, just beyond collecting your data, how it's used and how it's utilized, not only from a Wake Forest and research standpoint, but again, from the company side or the biotech side about later trial design. Um, so I'll stop there and see if there's any questions from the team or from any of the audience participation today. I think I saw one in the.
Let me go ahead and ask, since you brought it up, to tee it up. We did hear from Anna yesterday, 3 to 5 years, hopefully, before one or two clinical trials would get underway, which is not to say, then you've got to run the clinical trial, and that's years as well. But we asked a lot of folks, when folks registered, we said, what questions do you have for panelists? And by far, the most common question asked by at least 15, 20 individuals was, what is the timeline for a treatment? What is the timeline for a cure? And just basically, around that. And if you could answer what you can answer, given the stage of to Anna's point, things stepping forward, stepping back, and it's a dynamic, moving, lots of moving pieces. But what can you say to that to answer that question?
Yeah, I think Anna did a really good job yesterday at articulating, sort of the mountain. It's climbing a mountain. It's a humbling experience. Drug discovery is not a linear path, and we've learned that. I've especially learned that being in this role. What I can say without putting any concrete parameters around actual dates or years is that there's a tremendous amount of work underway aimed at developing a treatment for ADTKD. Our goal is the goal of, I think, many shared stakeholders and everyone on this call is to move, as urgently as possible to, do the work that needs to be done and bring a safe therapy to patients. I think Anna had mentioned also too yesterday is, there's talks and you take, one step forward, two steps back, three steps forward. So again, drug discovery is definitely not linear. I think one encouraging aspect of working in rare disease, and I think Eliza could probably answer this too, is that once we have something that's ready to go to the clinic, is that it can move, I think, a little bit more efficiently than other disease indications being in the rare disease because you don't really need as much, you don't need a large sample size. Um, there have already been early conversations, I will say, from our end with the FDA around potential clinical plans, which I think helps lay the groundwork later on for once we're ready to go into the clinic and a therapy is ready to be tested in patients. And I think, as I mentioned, with the urine collection study, that was a really proof of concept that we were able to tap into this registry and enroll patients in 3 months, 26 patients, which is just, again, tremendous. Um, Again, I think that said, and Anna did a really good job at articulating this, is that drug development is a step-by-step process, right? And the most important thing is making sure that we get it right. Um, I know waiting is incredibly hard, and I'm deeply aware of that. But I will say is that, the urgency that you feel, we feel on the company side. So that's something that motivates us every day in terms of moving closer to a treatment. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. Um, I say with a sigh, but I think I mean it was very helpful to hear from Eliza and from Eliza on the timeline, what it does take, and yet then also from Michelle, the role of the patient. So let me just ask quickly, and then we'll see if there's other questions. What would you say then is the most critical role of patients? I mean, what can we do at this point in addition to constantly reminding you that we're waiting for a treatment?
No, I think your voice, I will say you guys have the foundation and the patient community behind this has just been tremendous and has fueled, I think, a lot of the work that's being done and the speed at which things are being done. I'd say keep doing what you're doing. Kendra did a good job at trying to articulate, just joining the registry. I mean, that's really powering the information and knowledge of this disease area, being a rare disease and the testing and diagnostics, which again, I think have really come a long way in the past decade, as you saw from those charts from Kendra's graphs. It's really great to see those numbers grow every year because, again, I think, while it's rare, we don't think it's as rare, right? It's just we need to inform and mobilize and educate and get folks into that registry because once we're ready, it will be great to tap into that for the future clinical trial.
So is it fair to say, without us patients and our data,
Right.
there is no information, there is no clinical trial?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I think the ADTKD community is just absolutely amazing. Like you all are just so motivated and willing to, like I said, fill out surveys. And if
Mm.
you're able to be part of these trials like the urine collection study or the optimum perspective trial, we've had people, they're traveling to see us to do these ultrasounds. And it's just amazing. And I think, and as we've talked, Wake Forest and RKDF and Broad and with Catherine's company, you know, finding new patients. So the outreach to
Mm.
because we know, like you said, we know these other families are out here. It's just a matter of tapping in and finding those path, finding that path to those other families. So I think, yeah. That'd be
Okay.
great. Yeah, keep increasing those
Um,
numbers. And we'll try too. But, working together, I think we'll be able to. Yeah.
Yeah,
we
I think Kendra.
absolutely value our partnership. Go ahead, real quick.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that highlights it is that everybody on this call, every panelist, every participant that's, joining today, you're really a partner in making this happen, a cure, a treatment. We can't do it without one another. And I
Yeah.
really feel like that's something that's been such a good motivator to this group and this disease population. I mean, we've brought in patient days. I remember that at the Broad, we had those early patient days. I mean, we can't do it without one another. And I feel like we've really been partners in this. I mean, Kendra and I have been working together for over a decade. And,
Yeah,
the
that's
urine
great.
collection study was not without its trials and tribulations, but we learned so much about how to go into a clinical trial. We learned learnings about how, it would operate and the mechanics of it, but we also learned a lot from the patients too. So it's really, I mean, it's an incredible community. I think that this community is really special.
So we do have one question. I'll go ahead and take care of it, Suzanne. Um, from our audience, James wants to know how many people have registered abroad.
That's, that's a great
That's a good
question.
question. I could go, sorry, I don't have that information, but I can get that to you, Sharon, for your questions. So, the information that we did share with CPAT that's part of the retrospective study, we do have patients. The large part of our patients are in the United States and they're geographically dispersed. So that brings its own special where we something to work with looking at clinical trials going forward. But we worked through that with the urine collection study. Like
Mhm.
patients were sending stuff to us. We were sending them kits, they were sending them back like the next day. It was very rigorous and it worked.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but we do have patients that are in other countries that are enrolled with us. And so I can get those numbers together for you. And then also in the EU, Jan Halbritter, they have ADTKD ERCnet, I think it's for, yeah, and they're starting their uh, putting together, their own European registry and getting those patients together and setting up, a registry and a biobanking system, and it's really amazing. Yeah, so.
And we do have one other question in the chat. Um, maybe Suzanne, if you can see that. And
Yes, sure. Are you seeing that the age of onset decreases in subsequent generations? And I think Kendra, can you
Yeah,
answer?
yeah. So that's a really good question. So that's something that we've looked at. I don't want to say officially, but that's something that's definitely part of our analysis plan with CPATH and our natural history study with them. So that's one of the main questions for our initial statistical analysis is to look at that if there's any changes with between generations like that where it's an earlier onset. Yeah, but that's a really great question.
it's a great question. And it
Yeah.
really illustrates that your research plan, what you want
Mhm.
to do with the optimum study and, the 150 plus studies already with partners around the world, it informs basic science that will
Mhm.
also help clinical trial. But
Right.
it's these questions that we have,
Right.
will
Yeah.
my children get diagnosed younger than I will? And,
Right.
will their progression, thankfully, mine has been long and delayed. I've been in stage 4 for 10 years. Is
Mhm.
that likely to be what their experience will be? So
Right.
I love that what you're looking at is critical
Mhm.
information for both the science, the
Mhm.
treatment, and
Mhm.
the questions that we as patients want to know. So
Yeah.
let me just, on behalf of all of us
Mhm.
patients, thank you for being so mindful of what we're worried about, what we want, what we're concerned about
Of
as well.
course. Yeah.
And I think with that, and if there are any other questions that come in, we will answer them after the fact. Kendra, I'll get the
Yes.
information from you about
Yes. Thank you.
international
Yeah, of
numbers,
course.
and
Yeah.
we will post that. So thank you all for your questions. And we'll move on to our next session.
Thank you.